Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Cozy Mystery Mingle. Today, very excited because we have Felicity Green with us. Hi, Felicity.
Hi, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so fun fact Felicity is been so generous with her time. She's actually here from Germany, so it's late there where she's at. And fun fact, her books are all written originally in German, but luckily she's a translator, which we discovered before the call, and that's why the books are just done so well. I had no idea. I thought they were written in English first. They are amazing.
Thank you.
So I'll stop talking. You tell us about yourself.
All right. So I'm Felicity Green. I'm the author of the Scottish Witches Paranormal Cozy Mysteries and more than 30 other books in German. They're not out in English yet. I grew up in Germany and I moved to the UK in my late teens. And I went to University of Canterbury to study drama and English literature. And I always wanted to become an actress. That was my dream. And so I pursued that dream. I toured the British Isles with theater groups. I went all across England, Scotland, and Ireland, and I've got to know really amazing places, magical places. And I still love to travel there. And those places continue to inspire my books. That's where I get my ideas from. I stopped acting. I didn't really enjoy, being at the mercy of casting directors.
Mhm.
I wrote my own plays, and that's how I got into writing. I always loved books. I always used to write short stories. I did creative writing classes, but I made the switch to writing when I got accepted for a master's in creative and critical writing at University of Sussex in
Mhm.
Brighton, and I've been writing ever since. I worked in publishing as a freelance editor, as a freelance translator for indie authors, and now I'm just a writer, and now I'm here.
Just a right. I mean, you have a very creative background. So that's fun. And so tell us about the Cooking Up a Witch book and what it's about.
Cooking Up a Witch, that's book 3 in the Scottish Witches Mystery series.
Mhm.
And every book has a different witch of this Tarbet coven as a main protagonist. And in book 3, it's Fiona. And she's a bit of an outsider. She calls herself a freak. She's a bit of a loner, a bit
Mhm.
antisocial. She's had a bit of a difficult time because when she was younger, her grandmother told her a terrible secret about her origins, and she can't really talk about it with anybody. She's a bit afraid of what's inside of her, and that her relationships suffered because of that. And so she become a bit of a recluse. She's a rare books dealer, but in book 2, the protagonist in book 2, Penny, she got her to cook and learn how to eat healthy food and cook recipes. And
Mhm.
Fiona's never done that before. She hasn't really looked after herself. And she learned that she loved cooking, and she decided to change her life a little bit. And she applied for a job at a local restaurant, and she's a little bit in love with her boss, and she is trying out new recipes in this restaurant. And then she finds a book, and she discovers this book has been written by her grandmother,
Mhm.
and it's got recipes in it. It's a cookbook. She tries out the recipes in the restaurant. Disaster ensues because it's a magical cookbook, and she didn't
Mhm.
know. So she also doesn't know that there's a recipe in it that has got something to do with her dark origins.
Mhm.
And then there's a PI, Abby Fine, who comes to Tarbet. She needs to find this cookbook for her dubious client. Of course, Fiona doesn't want to give it up, and she wonders what this client has to do with her and her grandmother, and what the cookbook is all about. That's book 3 of the series.
Nice. And so, okay, so book 1 and book 2 focus on different witches in
That's
Scotland,
right.
right? Can you give us a little summary of book 1 and 2?
Yeah. So book 1 is called The Witch Club, and it really is about, it's more of a mystery real, mystery with supernatural elements, because you only really find out about this coven together with one of the protagonists called Jessi.
Mhm.
Her husband, she goes on a honeymoon to Tarbet, and just to give a really brief summary, her husband disappears, and she blames a B&B owner who looks like a witch, and she's convinced that this person has got something to do with the disappearance of her husband. So she stays in Tarbet for 10 years, has her own B&B there, and gets a bit obsessive trying to find out what happened to her husband. And she has an employee who helps her, but she is actually a witch, and that's Andy, and she's got visions of what happened. So that's book one. And in book two, the protagonist is Penny. It's called
Mhm.
Herb Witch for Hire. And, she's an herb witch. She's very, um, um, I'd say, self-sufficient. Others might say she's a bit arrogant and selfish. But she finds a pregnant girl in her rose garden and discovers sort of a compassionate side of herself.
Okay, nice. And so, can readers go into book three without reading book one and two?
They definitely can, yes.
Okay.
They're basically, I would say they're standalones, but you probably do enjoy book three a little bit more if you've seen Fiona grow just
Mm,
a bit in book two. Um, I wouldn't. Book four is up for pre-order. It's out in May, and I wouldn't start with book four because it reveals some secrets about the coven leader.
mm.
But you could start with book three. I had a couple of people write to me, a couple of readers write to me. They found book three and then worked their way backwards to book
Okay.
one. So it's definitely possible.
And so, all of the book, how many books total are in this series?
6 books and a couple of novellas and short stories.
Are you planning to translate all of them to
Yeah.
English? Okay.
hmm Yeah.
And
I'm
what about
currently translating book five.
okay? And what about all of the other books you've written? Are they will they be translated too, or what are the plans?
No, I don't think there will be, although I have another series I might do. It's my current German series. It's not cozy,
Hmm.
so I'm not sure. It's a paranormal mystery, but not cozy. And I like to stick with this genre, but I've started writing a paranormal cozy mystery in English.
Hmm.
So I'd like to write another series that's written in English and not in German, not translated. So
Okay. And so, I guess the German market are cozies really popular? Paranormal cozies over there?
they're getting more popular, but
Mhm.
when I first started publishing the series, the first book was published in 2016. There was no paranormal cozy mystery genre in Germany at all. So it was really difficult. And that's maybe also because my books are a little bit different than your standard paranormal cozy mystery series where you've got one protagonist hopping from adventure to adventure. So maybe I sort of invented that a little bit in in, in Germany because I used to read. I always read English books, so I
Huh.
used to read a lot of English paranormal cozies, or
Mhm.
that sort of genre, and so I wanted to write that, and it wasn't anything comparable. But now you see many more of those. There also weren't any sort of covers. My covers look very different in German. There weren't any examples of those either. Now you have a lot of paranormal cozy mysteries or cozy mystery authors use their US or their English covers for the German
Mhm.
market, and
Oh,
that it translates very successfully now. It didn't used to, but it's really nice to see.
nice. Cool. And so, okay, so let's talk about Scotland, even though you're in Germany. So, what do you love about the Scottish Highlands?
Oh, I just love Scotland. It's such magic, like the landscape's so nice. It just every corner has some story to tell.
Mhm.
That's what it feels like. Um, I love to travel to those places and find out about local lore and local legends, and there's so much of that in Scotland. I love it, and it's just so beautiful. It's one of my favorite places to travel to.
Nice. And so, okay, so let's talk about the lore. What is the witch folklore for Scotland?
All right, so it's a very interesting question, and I could probably go on for hours answering that. But I think first of all, witch is probably quite a loaded term
Mhm,
because especially in when you read Highland lore, it's got negative connotations because of
mhm,
it's a religious term really for women who had some sort of connection to the supernatural, who were healers and new charms and in those sort of small communities. And it, of course, the church, the persecutors, they were a bit afraid of powerful women, and so they had to
mhm,
make them bad people and evil people. And so a lot of those stories, which are written down by men, because witches didn't write anything down, those women were sometimes illiterate, they didn't write that down. So they often talk about evildoers or people who would harm others or put curses on others for their own gain.
mhm,
Whereas in fact, of course, you also had a lot of wise women and healers and herb women who were actually helping people in the community. Because those small Highland communities, of course, the worst would be if somebody would bring harm to their sort of small community.
mhm,
And that I do try to incorporate some of those sort of folklore bits and pieces that I gather into the story. In book 2, we have one of those spells where you put like a little bowl in a filled milk pail,
mhm.
and you say a spell and whatnot, and then the water moves around and until the bowl topples over, and that actually translate to a boat, and the boat capsizes just as the
Oh,
bowl topples over. And that actually happened um, at the end of the 16th century. Anne of Denmark traveled to Scotland with a fleet of ship to her husband, King James VI. And supposedly witches prevented her from getting to Scotland by doing this spell, and that's what kind of started the North Berwick witch trial. So that's sort of an actual historical little spell. But in my case, in my books, they prevent a bad person from getting to
mhm.
Tarbet. So they use it for good, not for evil.
They're good witches. Okay. And then, so I guess what's the difference for Scottish witches versus like American or German or any other country's witches? Or is there?
Mm, is there in real life? I don't know.
I
But
guess in the folklore, is there any difference? Or are they kind of all the same?
I think they're probably similar, but in fiction, in books, I think there is a bit of a difference.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I love reading US authors who write paranormal, cozy mysteries with witches. They're really, really great, but they're more like, Annabelle Chase or Daniel Garrett, I'm reading right now. They're more like snarky, fun witches
Mhm.
in supernatural communities, like fictional communities.
Mhm.
And I find European or English authors writing about witches, they're more maybe real communities and old sort of ancient real witchy practices.
Okay. All right. That's a good distinction. So if you could have any supernatural witch power, what would it be?
Oh, that is such a hard question because I'd like to have all of them.
Oh,
Um,
of course.
the sort of magical abilities, because in my books, each witch has a different gift. I don't think I've
Mhm.
said that before, but each witch
Oh.
has a different gift, and that's a little bit what the book is about. So in book 1, Andy has visions. In book 2, we have an herb witch, and in book 3, Fiona, she has sort of like an elemental witch. She can manipulate the elements. I mean, I think a very basic thing would be to turn water into ice. And
Mhm.
something like that, of course, would be really practical. You could, chill your drink on a hot summer's day or dry your hair without using a blow dryer. That would be pretty cool.
Yes.
But I think I also have a couple of clairvoyants in my books. Book
Hmm.
4 is about a clairvoyant, and I've always been fascinated with that. Like, there's also in the Highlands, there's a lot of tea leaf reading. That sounds
Uh-huh.
cool. Or tarot card reading. I probably would be more drawn to some sort of clairvoyant thing.
Okay. Very cool. So these kind of remind me, romance books always have like a different character. So what ties all the books together is they're all in the same coven or the same town or both?
Both. Yeah. What ties them together, it's one coven, and they all live in this community, this village that actually exists, called
Mhm.
Tarbet in the Scottish Highlands. Or a a Scottish reader recently wrote to me and said Tarbet's not really in the Scottish Highlands.
Oh.
I was like, okay. um, it is a destination of the West Highland Railway. And when I actually was inspired to write the first Scottish Witches book, when
Mhm.
I was on honeymoon myself, and we accidentally ended up in Tarbet when we hiked the West Highland Way. So it's on the technically Loch Lomond, which is where Tarbet is on the shore of Loch Lomond.
Mhm.
It's sort of the boundary for it. So there's the lowlands on one side and the highlands on the other.
Okay. And so, I guess the actual town of Talbot, is it a small town or is it a big city or like
No,
what?
it's really small. It's like a village. Yeah.
Mm, okay.
It,
All right.
it's
But you've been
basically a couple of houses with lots of B&Bs.
there. Okay. And you've stayed there or you just hiked through there?
No, I stayed there. I
Okay.
can tell the story
Yeah.
because it's quite fun. Um, it's basically what happens to Jessi in book 1. My husband and I, we hiked the West Highland Way.
Mhm.
We underestimated how difficult it was with our heavy backpacks. And on the
Mhm.
third day, we got to Rowarden Youth Hostel, and there were no beds. And the next accommodation was really far away. So
Oh no.
luckily, there was a water taxi once a day that took where we could go to Tarbet, which was on the other side of Loch Lomond. So we took the water taxi. My guidebook said there's lots of B&Bs. So I was like, okay, we definitely find something there.
Mhm.
Got there in the rain, in the dark. We knocked on every door, no vacancies.
Oh my God.
And we were like, oh my God, we have to pitch up our tent. We did have a tent, but we'd have to pitch up the tent in the dark, in the rain, on the side of the road. And then luckily somebody said, well, there's this Mrs. McDonald. She rents a room in her house. It's no guidebooks and there's no website or anything. So she usually
Mhm.
has a room available. Why don't you try that? So we're like, okay, we got there. And then the woman who opened the door really looked like a witch. And this B&B, it was like you shared the bathroom with this person, with this witch.
Mhm.
And it was like really old fashioned, but we couldn't go. We had to stay there, even though
Right.
we felt like it wasn't a very good idea, but we didn't really want to, but we had no other choice. And so in the book, this happens to Jessi, and the next morning when she wakes up, her husband is gone. Because
Oh.
that's what I came up with while I was lying there in my bed, like really afraid of what's going to happen to us.
That's a good inspiration. Yeah, being alone, that would make it scary.
But my husband was still there the next morning,
Okay.
and we're still married. Everything's still good.
And you made it out.
I made it out. Yeah. And it was actually one of the best days we had. We discovered this restaurant, which is the restaurant that Fiona works at in book 3, which is an old converted church, and it's really nice. And this witchy lady, Mrs. McDonald,
Mhm.
who is an actual witch in my books, but she turned out to be a really nice old lady. So everything was fine.
Well, that sounds like a good adventure.
Mm.
So Fiona was in book 2. Does Desi from book 1 or Penny from book 2 come into any future books?
Yes. They all reappear. They all live, because it's all about this coven. Each book is, you could maybe describe the arc of the series as how the coven sort of grows together.
Mhm.
So you get to see all the witches again, uh, as sidekicks in the other books.
Okay, cool. And so is Fiona kind of like a mini Felicity? Like how much is she like you and your personality?
I think there's probably a little bit of myself in every main character I write. It's funny. I recently did an Enneagram for writers course, and I discovered that most of my characters are also an Enneagram 1, like I am.
Oh,
So,
all right.
but Fiona isn't. Um, I don't think she's very much like me, in the sense that I'm more like a driven, goal-oriented, type A personality, and she's definitely not. I would say she's a bit lazy, and
She's the
she
polar
she's
opposite.
very introverted, but I sometimes get like that. So need my own space, my own time, and so and also I really like to eat, like
Okay.
Fiona does. I like good food, good Scottish food. We get to discover lots of nice Scottish recipes in this book, and Fiona loves it, and I love it too. And I wanted to write a character who loves to eat and who
Mhm.
packs on the pounds a little bit. I hate it when you have characters in books and they eat all the cake and they still look like
You're
super
perfect.
sexy and
Yeah.
square.
Yeah,
The
and that's funny
Lorelai
you say that
Gilmore effect, I
the
call it.
cookbook, right? So it's the cookbook. Okay. Are there recipes in this book?
Um, no,
Okay.
but I do sometimes put recipes in my newsletter,
Mm.
or there's one book which is sort of like a Christmas, like an advent calendar type book with 24 chapters, which isn't out in
Mhm.
English yet, but it does feature some recipes. So I do like to give recipes to my readers every now and again.
Is your newsletter in English or German?
Yes, I have an English newsletter.
Oh, okay.
So if anybody wants to try out the series, I have a free novella called No Rest for the Wicked Witch, and it's free if you sign up for my newsletter. So check it out.
Okay, great. And so does or not Felicity, does Fiona have someone helping her to solve the mystery in the book or a friend?
Yeah, usually some of the other witches help.
Mm.
And we always have this, like in this case, the private investigator, Abby, sort of an unsuspecting person coming to Tarbet and learning
Mhm.
about the supernatural community and the witches. And so they help. But Fiona's best friend is Andy, who's the witch from book one, the one with visions, and she's sort of her best friend. So
Okay, nice. And there's no love interest in this one, is there?
there is.
Oh, there is.
There's always sort of like a little side plot romance story
Okay.
going on. Fiona is in love with her boss, and
Mm,
there's a bit of that going on. But the romance doesn't, it's always sometimes a little bit in it, but not always, and it's not a main plot event.
okay. And does he help at all with tracking down like the origins of the
Yeah.
cookbook or
He's more like the victim of some of the spells that go
oh,
wrong.
okay. Because she tries out the food on him.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, very cute. All right. So, well, tell us what are your writing plans for 2024?
Well, I always have too many plans, so I have to be careful that I don't tell. I sometimes I go, okay, I'm going to publish this book and this book and this book, and
Mhm.
then it never happens because, life. But I definitely am currently, book 4 is on
Mhm.
pre-order. It's out in May. I'm translating book 5, which features Weather Witch Jim Rivers. It's very an exciting book with a tsunami on Loch Lomond.
Mhm.
So that's coming out this summer. And hopefully, book 6 will come out this year as well. But I really would love to continue writing this cozy mystery series that I've started writing, which is set in the UK, in the Cotswolds, and it's about a ghost photographer. and I hope to that I can publish this year as well.
Okay, great. And that's going to be written in English first, so we
In
don't
English,
for
yes. Yeah.
translation. Nice. And so, where can readers find you? So they can sign up for your English newsletter, and then are you on social media? Any of the platforms?
I am on social media. I'm on Facebook and on Instagram. So they can find me there, but maybe check out my website, which is felicitygreenauthor.com. And you can find all the links to Instagram, to Facebook. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can find everything there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for being on today and sharing so much about your books.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great. I love talking about it and love talking to you. I'm a big fan of your channel and your podcast. So I'm so happy that I could be a guest here.
Awesome. All right. I will leave all of Felicity's information below, and we'll talk to everyone later. Bye.
Bye, everyone.